Well, this is an interesting turn of events. Donald Trump Jr. has added himself to the list of people taking issue with the way that his father is campaigning against Vice President Harris. What? We have reviewed many times in the past, but it's been a while. The Triggered podcast that Donald Trump Jr. does. And on it, he did a little Q&A section, as he likes to do, and got asked a question about the pettiness of his father and how maybe that's not serving the campaign. And what you'll see here is a terrified Donald Trump Jr., terrified to say anything critical of his father, taking way too long to meander his way around the point of, it would be more effective if my dad would not go after the identity in petty ways or levy personal, ridiculous attacks against Vice President Harris, and instead made this a more policy-oriented campaign. But instead of just delivering it like that, he goes on for quite some time because he's really nervous, you can tell. Terrified, like I said, to be critical of his father, so you got to decipher the point out of it. But I'll play the full thing here in just a second so you can see what I mean. And this is a notable phenomenon. MAGA folks turning to Trump or telling him on Fox News, please stop the questioning of Harris's race, calling her dumb, low IQ, he's been saying. And then the absolutely delusional things we've been hearing from him about crowd sizes, saying all of Harris's crowds are AI because he can't accept that she has bigger rallies than his. And all of that is just serving her campaign. So like I've said before, my interests say, let him keep doing it and we'll win this election. Obviously, those like Donald Trump Jr. want him to stop so they could have a shot. Here we go.
Please ask your dad to stop the petty name calling. That's interesting. I think maybe that's right. I think the reality is this. I think you have to attack back when you're attacked, and that's what they do to him. It's not fair. It's not real, whatever, but we got 86 days left. We just got to fight on the policies. We got to point out these things. The name calling could be a distraction, just lets the other side say, look at this, look at that. Some of the low information voters that just hear those things or hear the thing clipped, it's the one negative thing said in a 90-minute speech. My father makes fun of someone. They say, look, this is what he's doing. And, it could be policy after policy after policy after policy after policy. It doesn't matter. That's what they hear. So, you know what? I'm a fan of fighting back. I'm a fan of hitting back. It's sort of what I do, but maybe that's what it is. Let guys like me do that and he can stay on point. You probably achieve the same thing. And I think there's probably a lot of truth to that, because by the time it's manipulated by the media, by the time they focus only on that and not the real things behind it, people who are not paying as much attention, I could see them getting just simply distracted or turned off by that. So I think, that's something that matters. I don't think you're wrong, actually, in this case. I think, in 16 it's different. All these kinds of things. Let's see. Hey, Don, tough question for you. We love your dad. We could get him to stick to the policies. Yep. U.S. Patriot 1, I think that's sort of the same thing. It's like, focus on the policies, focus on the things that matter for Americans. We don't need to worry about crowd size or that. I don't actually disagree with that. I mean, I may or may not have had some of those conversations just because, again, I think I understand what the media is doing. I understand.
So they're revealing that he may or may not have, so he did have a conversation with his dad about this very subject. And isn't it interesting that the questions coming in, two back to back, were Trump supporters saying, could you get your dad to stop sinking his own campaign, please? And Donald Trump Jr., I guess, indicating he's asked his dad to do the same thing, but his dad doesn't have the discipline. Before playing more of this, just to expand on that, we talked about Nikki Haley saying a similar thing. Please stop talking about crowd sizes and her race. We've seen Kayleigh McEnany, I think it was, or maybe Tommy Lauren, different people on Fox News saying the election is not going to be won with this stuff. This is causing the drop in polls for Trump. As Harris, bless you, Jaden, little producer Jaden sneezed there. And you have Peter Navarro even reiterating this, and a bunch of people trying to get Trump, trying to convince him to be more strict in his messaging. We even talked about, I think, the whole Asheville, Tennessee event that he held that was branded as a speech about the economy was an attempt by his staff to get him to just stay focused on a few points about the economy. They're going to be distortions. They're going to mislead people about the record of the Biden-Harris administration. But that's a more effective direction to go, as dishonest as it might be, than the one he's currently going down. But even this event that was specifically, it seems, designed to keep him in some very thoughtful parameters on the part of his aides, he still lashed out at Kamala Harris as having a laugh that he doesn't like. She's crazy. And that's not working. And so now even his own son publicly saying, yeah, I mean, I really don't want to have to say this. Feel really uncomfortable, but yes, definitely he should probably focus on policies. But here's the deal. It doesn't seem like he's capable of doing that. And this is the guy that you've all stood by. So now you have to deal with the repercussions of someone who's utterly incapable of running a disciplined campaign, because when he goes up against someone who triggers him as much as Kamala Harris does, for many of the reasons you can imagine, and possibly others, he can't do anything other than letting his desperation be seen. That's what we're watching. We talked about Chris Christie saying that as someone who's known from Trump for a long time, his character is one that when he feels like he's leading, he can be a little bit more disciplined. He can take the advice of his advisor a little more. But when he starts feeling like things are slipping away, he gets desperate, panicked, and impulsive. And that's what we're observing. It's gotten so bad, and MAGA's in such a tenuous crisis moment, that even Donald Trump Jr. on his podcast is saying to those commenters, yeah, I wish the petty attacks would go away as well. Now, last thing I'll say before playing this next moment from the podcast, I am so irritated by this. The media only focuses on Trump's petty attacks. The media is going to make that seem like his campaign and not focus on policy after policy after policy, as Don Jr. said. The rich and substantive and thoughtful and level-headed discussions Trump is having on a daily basis, they ignore it all because he questioned the identity of Harris. And the first thing is, he really struggles to have substantive policy conversations as someone who has watched more hours of him than I could possibly have imagined coming into this job. So I know what a full speech sounds like, and he struggles to stay on script and talk about policy. That's the first thing. But even so, stop acting like it's some unfair treatment of Trump by the media for them to focus on him saying that his opponent turned black and then deposed her birth certificate, wrongly thinking it proved that she wasn't black, and he's trying to prove that in front of the world and falling on his face doing so. Of course, that's going to be more of a story than him repeating for the 10 billionth time, they're coming from jails, they're coming from insane asylums, they're coming from Hannibal Lecter, right? It's not a media conspiracy. It's not unfair for them to go, oh my gosh, he's saying something no presidential candidate has ever said, so outrageous, so indicative of his low character and his impulsiveness, we should probably put some emphasis on that. The scapegoating by MAGA of the media for everything is really getting under my skin. Maybe Trump just needs to stop saying horrific, outrageous things, and then the media wouldn't have so much to work with in making him look bad. Here's more, and this is now him going after Harris on the border.
Up headlines, because first off, we got to ask ourselves, guys, how stupid does Kamala Harris think voters are? Here's her latest ad. Watch for yourself and see.
She backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So, I don't know. Why don't we go through these lies one by one? The toughest border control bill in history. Really? I mean, is she talking about the Senate bill that would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants to cross our border every year? Is that the one that she's talking about? Because that doesn't seem all that tough to me.
So, this is just sort of something you always got to keep in mind. If someone has to rely on dishonesty to make an argument, they have the weaker argument. That's what we're seeing there. Engage with the actual bill, please. That was crafted by a super conservative senator, James Langford. Don't do this. Oh, it allows in over 1 million people. That's what or many of them would say it allows in 5,000 people a day or something. And what they're referring to, they just pull this out of their rear end. But always it comes from somewhere, and the figure they got to make themselves feel justified in saying that is the figure that then triggers an emergency response by the government, an authority that the U.S. president has never had before and still doesn't have. Trump didn't have it. Biden hasn't had it. Obama didn't have it. To restrict the asylum process at the border. If encounters, not people just being allowed in, as they say, but encounters at the southern border get to a certain figure. I think it was around that 5,000. If it gets to that, then an emergency status is enabled and the asylum process is restricted. That's not at all what he's articulating it to be. Again, it would be new authority for the president to engage in actions that they never had the power to before, and Trump didn't either. But they lie. Thus, I think they don't actually have a strong argument against this legislation. The majority of people who regularly watch this show aren't subscribed to it. That's kind of crazy, right? If that applies to you, do me a favor and click that subscribe button. Easy, free, but makes all the difference. I appreciate it. Back to the video. And here's another interesting thing on that subject, because we're going to be talking probably a lot about this border bill that proves how little MAGA actually is interested in solving problems because of their blocking of it. And Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, made this point when a Fox News reporter tried to corner her.
And how long have you guys known that Vice President Harris does not think President Biden is doing a good job at the border?
Wait, say that one more time?
Well, she's now promising to hire thousands more border agents than there are now under President Biden.
Wait, but start your question again.
How long have you guys known that Vice President Harris does not think that President Biden is effective with his border policy?
I mean, that you're making a huge jump. Why she did not say this. This is something that you are assuming. I don't understand why you would assume that. It's not true.
She has a campaign ad where she is saying they need more Border Patrol agents. If President Biden's doing such a good job, why do they need any more border agents?
We both believe that. The president does want more Border Patrol agents. You know who's getting in the way? You know who's getting in the way? Republicans in Congress. They're getting in the way. You know who else is getting in the way? The former president, Donald Trump. He's getting in the way. I mean, there's no daylight here. I'm not understanding the question because there's no daylight. The president believes that as well, and he's worked towards doing that. There's a bipartisan, I know you guys probably get sick of me saying this, but there was a bipartisan agreement that was on the table that the president worked through for a couple of months with Republicans in the Senate and Democrats. They were told not to move forward because it would help Joe Biden by the former president. That's their decision.
Yeah, so you've heard that from me many times, which is why I wanted her to say it, to make it feel a little bit more fresh than me going through it all over again. But it's not that there aren't more complex conversations to be had about this. There are. And we've engaged in those. But because their attack is so simple, I think our response needs to be so simple to really get the message out. Because if we can first expose that right now the thing preventing progress on the issue is MAGA Republicans, then maybe we can all come to the table and be good faith and figure out how to be reasonable on this and get things done and solve problems. But they've shown, and it's so annoying to deal with, a prioritization of the fear-mongering above everything else. And you can't fear-monger if you assist in solving the problem. So, sad lies, but lies nevertheless. Let me know what you thought of all that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below. That also supports the work that we do.